Thank you. Just wanted to give a pause for that. Again, if you're just joining, this is a recorded talk. We will be taking some questions at the end, but if you have any throughout and you don't want to forget them, please feel free to pop them in the chat. We also have closed captioning available, so please see the CC icon on your Zoom toolbar for any subtitle settings. And we do also have ASL translation provided today by Tessa and Jordan, who are spotlighted, but feel free to also please pin them to your screen so they're easily and readily available to you. Please be mindful of audio and keep your mic muted during the presentation as we discussed. And as always, be respectful of one another in today's space. Thank you again for joining. My name is Belinda Owase. I'm the Artist Programs Coordinator for STEPS Public Art, and I support our artist capacity building programming, including our CreateSpace Public Art Residency. And this panel talk is the first panel talk for this year's residency, which I'm very excited to be co-hosting with Tatiana from ArtsBuild. So thank you all for being here, and I'll pass it off to Tatiana to introduce herself.
Great, thanks, Belinda. Good evening, everyone. I'm Tatiana Doucette. I'm the program manager for ArtsBuild Ontario, and I'm very excited to be collaborating with STEPS and co-facilitating this panel tonight. ArtsBuild Ontario is a provincial arts service organization that provides small and medium-sized organizations with tools, training, and advice to successfully manage physical and digital creative spaces. ABO works to reimagine the future of creative spaces through dedicated research projects and an engaged network of supportive partners. We're excited to collaborate on this discussion as ABO offers our own mentorship program called the CreateSpace Mentoring Network. This is an opportunity for leaders in Ontario's arts community who are responsible for their spaces, capital-related issues, or are seeking to acquire or establish physical or digital creative space to experience virtual one-to-one learning with an experienced professional in the Ontario arts and heritage sector. We are very excited to be chatting with Elle, Bruce, Quentin, and Bruno. And Elle and Bruce are current participants in our program, so excited to just wanted to add that little pitch there. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that ArtsBuild Ontario's province-wide network includes the traditional and unceded territories of the Anishinaabe, Attawandarock, Petun, Cree, Haudenosaunee, Huron-Wendat, and Métis. ArtsBuild Ontario commits to making our programs and initiatives safe and accessible for all, and we also recognize that we are a settler organization that values respectful collaboration with all the Indigenous peoples of Turtle Island who continue to be our neighbors, friends, and colleagues. With that, I think we'll turn it over to our panelists to introduce themselves. So I don't know, maybe we can hand it over to Bruce to kick us off.
Sure, why not? Hi, everybody. I'm very pleased, thankful to be here actually within this group tonight. And my name is Bruce Pitkin, he, him pronouns, and I'm the executive director at ArtsStart. And ArtsStart is a community, of course, community arts organization based out of Yorkdale, serving the Lawrence Heights area in Toronto. We run about 40 different programs a year, multidisciplinary art programs. Before that, I was an executive director at Theatre Ontario, and also an art service organization. But for theatre, I have been in performing arts, I would say, for a long, long time, and sort of trained as a classical actor, but I've also worked overseas. I've worked across Canada, in the US, but also Japan, Taiwan, and I was in Germany for 8 years running an acting school there. And so mentorship has always been a part of what I have experienced in terms of any success that I can say that I have, it's been due to anyone who has helped me along the way. And it's something you always feel you're standing on the shoulders of giants because they actually help you to see farther and do that. So with that, do you want me to pass it on to Bruno, who's sort of right beside me on the screen?
Thanks, Bruce. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bruno Canadien. I am a member of the Kakoti First Nation, which is a Decho region community of Denendeh and a signatory to Treaty 11. I was born and raised in Denendeh in the communities of Jatiquin and Hay River. I'm currently based in Diamond Valley, which is situated on the banks of the Sheep River, south of Calgary, within the traditional territory of the Siksika-Titapi, Tsuut'ina, and Ayethka Nakota Wichitabi nations. I'm a multidisciplinary visual artist with a focus on exploring Indigenous presence, resistance, and relationality through painting. But in 2020, I was fortunate enough to participate in a STEPS online public art residency. And since then, I've been engaged in several public art projects, mainly murals, but also some sculptural pieces as well. And we can talk more about that later if it comes up. Thanks. I'll just pass it on to Elle.
Thanks, Bruno. Hi, everyone. Peace and blessings. My name is Elle de Lyon, and I am a serial entrepreneur. And I really earn a living from various creative endeavors, including writing, curating, and teaching. And mentorship has always been a key to my success in the community art space. I'm happy to say that I've been able to use mentorship to help me develop my potential and find my artistic voice. And currently I work as the program director for Rise Edutainment, which is a community-based arts organization. And we built a platform to help to bridge the gap for emerging artists that are looking to advance their selves and their careers into the professional space. We provide resources and opportunities, and really we provide mentorship. And through this, I would say that my work at Rise, I've also gone through a mentorship as well. It's helped me to become the community organizer that I am today. And I use these skills now to help other organizations in the BIPOC communities to help them monetize their creativity. And I really do love educating people about the value of art beyond just the performance aspect of it, but also the benefits that it can have for your wellness and overall sense of belonging to this planet, really. And I've, taken that now to build my own organization, which I co-founded and I now call Made Well. And through that agency, I'm able to produce events and projects that center around arts and wellness, showcasing talents and promoting self-care. And I'm really excited about the future and the impact that we can make in these industries. And as Tatiana said, I'm also currently in the ArtsBuild mentorship program, where I'm using that mentorship to help us at Rise find permanent space in the community so we can continue doing the work that we do. And I will pass it off to Quentin. Thank you.
All right, so greetings, bonjour, wagwan. I go by the name of Quentin VerCetty. And yeah, I started doing legal murals with Art Starts in 2009, but my venture into public art started back in my neighborhood of Rexdale, where I was doing murals illegally, but really to engage my community. And I was always interested in art and the power of art, especially coming from a Jamaican background where art was surrounded all around us. So fast forward, my first sculptural installation started in 2015 in Belize. And I saw the power of how it mobilized community. And that whole experience was about mentorship. We worked with the children in San Ignacio, and we created this art piece called Show Love. And I decided to want to continue to do installations and mural work. And so since then, I became the steward of the Black Speculative Arts Movement, where we were pushing the ideas of Afrofuturism and this idea of being accountable ancestors and how can you pay it forward towards the future. And from that, I created Astro Sankofa Arts Initiative, where we're all about supporting Black and Indigenous youth and emerging artists to get into public art and supporting them with their ideas, supporting them with growing their portfolio, and more specifically, creating a network of artists who are supporting each other across Canada. And been fortunate enough to actually create Toronto's first monument for person of African descent, which is of Joshua Glover, and have a lot more in the works. And in doing so, mentorship has been very key to all the things I've been able to accomplish, and being able to see my mentees do such amazing things has been such an honor. So I'm honored to be a part of this conversation and contribute.
Amazing, thank you. I'm so excited for this great group of speakers and artists to get into conversation. So the first question I have is quite interesting and excited for it to kick us off, which basically is, what does bad mentorship look like? And I guess we can work our way back from that, or what mentorship shouldn't be. And in any order, feel free to jump in.
So I will go first. So I love this question because I've been on both sides of being a mentor and also being a mentee. So this perspective or this response is coming from, those perspectives. That being said, I think that bad mentorship looks unprepared. It has a lot to do with being unprepared on both sides. For the mentor, that means they are not prepared to be able to share the blueprint of how they have gotten to where they are. And I think that being a mentor means that you prepare materials for your mentee to be able to follow these steps. So you would really have to have a really clear idea of how you've been able to achieve these things. And I think that there's different types of mentorship. So that mentorship that I just described is a mentorship opportunity, I think, that has been clearly defined as such. Like there are clear goals, and the mentee knows that by speaking to this mentor, I'm going to be able to get to this certain spot. Without these kind of things talked about right in the very beginning or outlined, identified, then I think you're heading into a very, what we'll call a bad mentorship position. And I think that that just trickles down, like that lack of preparedness will trickle down into everything, like your time management, being able to meet regularly so that this can be a productive pairing. And yeah, I think that you'll start to see that happen in many different areas of your relationship. Mentorship is just like any relationship. So all of the things that go into a relationship you have with your friend or someone that you care about, I think are the things that you should be thinking about when you're entering this on either side. So if that is not in your mind, if that's, you're not mindful of those things, I think you will see that lack of preparedness really be a detriment to the relationship in mentorship.
I think, excuse me, I think Elle is spot on there when she compares it to, well, says it is a relationship. That's the main thing for me is building that relationship and maintaining it, like you would a friendship or one with your family member. And I think the only other thing I would add to that is communication. Poor communication would, especially in this day and age when people aren't necessarily in the same physical neighborhood or physical community, that if you can really work on those communication skills and be available on both sides, as a mentor and as a mentee, that really goes a long way.
Great points. Did you guys want to touch on this, Bruce and Quentin?
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump in there. Yeah, also being on both sides, I would say definitely boundaries, when there's a lack of boundaries, you definitely end up with bad mentorship, because sometimes a mentee would want you to be more than a mentor. They want you to be a counselor, therapist, like, parent figure, like, all these different things. And so sometimes when those expectations and those boundaries are not honored and or established, things become a little bit imbalanced. Not a little bit, oftentimes will become imbalanced. Also, I would say when mentorship becomes exploitive as well, it's very easy for a mentee to try to take advantage of their access to a mentor. And then it's also very easy for a mentor to take advantage of their mentee, knowing that, hey, this person wants to learn from me. So I might be like, yo, you're gonna paint this whole thing for me, and then I'm gonna take credit for, like, you know, like I've never done that, but you know, I've seen that happen to other people, and I think those are examples of bad mentorship, in my opinion.
It's very difficult to add anything more to that. I just will touch on what actually Elle said. The unprepared, I would say, before that, it's the undefined or ill-defined, and not having really clear goals of why you're entering into this relationship. You really, I mean, where you set the goal to isn't necessarily where you're going to end up, but you have to have the goal going in order to know where is it going off track and be able to course correct on it. And then that, for me, that follows in what Elle said about being unprepared. Because if you know where your goal is, you know you have to prepare for where you're going along the way.
Thank you. Yeah, I find that's very interesting about the goal setting not necessarily being where you end up. I think that kind of leads into the next question as well. All of you come from different experiences as both mentors and mentees. And so my question is more so, at early stages of one's career, what does mentorship look like versus once you get more established, and how do these changes come into play for all of you independently from your experience?
I'm going to jump in on that one right away.
Yeah.
I think for someone, an emerging artist, it's about, like, you know, how can I get there? It's, you know, for a mid-career artist, you know, a mentorship is about, like, how do I find my way back to where I wanted to go? And for a senior artist, it's like, how do I keep invigorating my career, or you know, having that beginner's mind to be able to go back? Because when you start to accumulate a lot of experience and knowledge, it's very difficult. It can be boundaries on its own, because it can sort of stop you from looking at new horizons.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, yo, when I started, I was super arrogant. Anyone can tell you, I was like, you know, I was on my high horse. I was like, you know, trying to size myself up with people who I was like being mentored by, like, you know. So I think going in, like, my mentorship was like about trying to prove I can also do it, and getting the opportunity to show and prove, you know. And it's like, okay, well, I'm really trying to learn from you so I can do it myself. And who do I need to know, right? Like, who can you point me to then show and prove, you know? So that was the emerging part, but I was just me, like, just coming in thinking I'm Michael Jordan of public art, you know? And nowhere close, like not even hitting the rim, like, you know, just but as I became more established, it became more about the intentions of the mentorship and making sure it's reciprocal. So what can I offer in exchange? And making sure it's not feeling like it's a transaction, but feeling like it's something that's mutual. And also for me, my work is very ancestrally guided and grounded, right? So Astro Sankofa, Black Speculative Arts Movement, all those things are really rooted in alignment. And so for me, it's always like, I need to know that what we're doing is in alignment with each other on a metaphysical level, but also on a practical level, because I think it allows, on a professional level, things to flow better. And so, you know, when the alignment is not there, then it's like, you know, it's cool. You know, it's cool. We can just be associates, right? Rather than enter into an engagement of mentorship.
Yeah, I love that, especially the aspect of it not being transactional. Of course, that also goes back to boundaries, but I think that's a really good point in the different levels and types of relationships that exist within mentorship.
Yeah, and I was just thinking, I'm really glad that Quentin, you threw it back to when you first started out, you know, seeking mentorship. And I tried to think about when I started. And I was pretty young. Like I grew up knowing that mentors is what helps you to grow. Like you need somebody who has done this before in order for you to be able to do it. That was kind of instilled at me at a young age. So I was seeking mentors, you know, like age 17. I was just trying to be a part of anything I could. And I saw mentorship, and I still do to this day, as service. Like I can see that somebody who is mentoring someone, they're serving, they're giving of themselves, something they don't have to do. Usually, like even if you're getting paid, it's usually nominal. You're not, you know what I mean? You're not making the same money or getting the same accolades as you would if you just focused on yourself. However, to advance like the whole community, there needs to be mentors and people who see themselves in that role and perform that role. And so I would seek these people out. And I would always think in my mind, what can I do to serve them so that they would want to serve me? I don't know if that line of thinking was, you know, great at, because it is transactional in a way. And I think that as I've grown, I've started to see mentorship in a different way, but it's still about service for me. And I just see the bigger picture that by me, yes, serving this person, and it will service me. So not in the I'm just doing it so they can give me something, but for the bigger picture, I see that me learning these skills, I can bring it back to my community. I can teach someone else how to do this. There's going to be someone else who knows how to do this besides me. And just like building a legacy is really what I see the purpose of mentorship to be, and why I think it's important. And I think that it does change along the way for the different levels that you are in your career, as Bruce mentioned. I think now for me, for instance, with the ArtsBuild mentorship, because of the position I'm in as the program director at RISE, part of what I am responsible for is now finding space for us to do our programming and do our events. So now this type of mentorship that's all about helping organizations find permanent space has become important. So I think that along your journey, you're going to find different levels of mentorship, but it's also going to be based on what you're interested in, what you're trying to learn now, the things that you don't know and that you want to know. Yeah, so that would be I guess the journey for me that I'd love to impart for other people. That, yeah, it will change. It will change based on your levels of where you want to be. And to always just keep your big picture in mind, like your why, like why are you doing this? Clearly defined goals are very important all along the way.
Thank you. Do you want to add anything to that, Bruno?
Yeah. In my experience, my career hasn't been very linear. It hasn't been a case of leveling up as we go on. I think early on in my career, what mentoring looked like for me was pretty informal. I was just always being open to advice and to learning from whoever was around at the time, and whoever was, generous enough to share their knowledge or their skills or whatever they had to offer. And then when I did the STEPS residency, the public art residency, it sort of, and this is 20 years into my career, the part of the residency was you got a mentor to work with you. And yeah, it sort of put me right back to being early on in my career, like an emerging artist again, because obviously I was in that residency because I didn't know much about public art and I wanted to learn about that process. So, it was, again, that was a more official mentorship scenario. But yeah, I think no matter what stage you're at, if you're just open, just keep an open mindset, and yeah, mentorship can take many forms.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really good point about when mentorship can also happen within your career, which is why I wanted to ask that about being more established versus emerging and how those differences play out. I also really like, Elle, that you pointed to purpose of mentorship, which was my next question. I'm just interested to know, both from a mentor and a mentee perspective, what intention you go into a mentorship experience with, and what your purpose would be entering that situation or that relationship. Feel free to jump in, anyone.
Yeah, I'll jump in. Let's jump in out deep end. Yeah, my intentions is always, how can I be of service to this person? How will their descendants thank them for that exchange that we will have? You know, again, thinking about being accountable ancestors and paying it forward. It's like, okay, what can I provide this person in this moment in time that will help them in the long run? Whether it's through the lessons that I've learned or just through the skill sets that I possess, or just through my network, you know. So I think for me, it's like, how can I be of best of service, and then creating an understanding of like our shared expectations of each other, you know, and what's the limitations, if there are limitations. Well, there are always limitations, because, you know, I can't be accessible 24/7. So I think those are the first few things that pop in my mind.
Yeah, great point. You can't be accessible 24/7. It's true. Anyone else?
Sure, I can add. Oh, and I've got the motorcycles outside my house now. I think the intention is a really, really important thing, although the reason why you may seek out a mentor, I mean, maybe for a reason that you don't really understand or know. I mean, I just use my own, that I know that early in my career, when I was, I studied math and I transitioned out of that career into being an artist. And I think looking for a mentor was for me about understanding how I define who I am, my identity, and also, you know, the confidence to express that, you know, through art. And that was something that I had no idea how to define that at the time, but that sort of to be a reoccurring theme in doing that, and that intention. As a mentor, I've found, and also this is exactly with my art, is that I get a great deal of joy out of seeing someone with talent that they don't know they have, and helping them to, how do they unfold their talent, but letting them discover how to do that, and not sort of say, well, this is how I did it and this is what works. It's really, you know, that uniqueness of them finding out. And as artists, we all know this, is that you have to learn yourself, because then the lesson is the deepest. And it's for me as a mentor, my intention is, you know, what is the uniqueness of this person, and what is sort of how can, through whatever activity we do, how can that help to give them that experience?
Yeah, I really love what you said there, Bruce. It made me feel very nostalgic, and it really helped me to formulate this answer that, for me, really what I love so much about being a mentee was that I grew up in an environment, one that I found was very chaotic, and it was hard to find myself in that environment. And then I found that it was hard to be heard and to be seen for many reasons, like, you know, systemic barriers, of course, being one, but just, you know, the nature of the vessel that I was brought into, you know, gives me a lot of challenges. And that challenge of being heard, seen, and valued, those things kind of disappeared when I found mentors who saw me, and they did what Bruce was describing, like they let me unfold and evolve right before them. They watched me grow, and they didn't do, I think, what my parents sometimes did, which was be very authoritative, and this is how I did it, and that means you have to do it this way. Their intention was not that. Their intention, they came into it, was to help someone become who they want to be. not who they think they should be. So I think that that was very freeing for me as a mentee. That was a feeling I had never experienced before. And I felt so uplifted by that, that really drove me to want to become a mentor. Like I wanted to be a mentor. Like as soon as like the first day that someone gave me that feeling, I was like, I want to do this. Like I want to be the person that that makes people feel this way. And I had to realize, like, I remember wanting to be a life coach at like age 21. Like I even went through the courses, like, and one of the feedback I got from mentors was, hey, I think you need to live a little bit more before you tell other people how to live their lives, right? And I remember feeling so shut down by that. But I'm so glad that I took their advice, and it was coming from a mentor, somebody that I trusted. And I knew that their intention was to watch me unfold, watch me grow. They're giving me good advice. This is not to shut me down. And they really helped me to understand that, yeah, I did need to live a bit more. And now I'm able to really impart this knowledge because of what I've been through. And my intention always is, I just really want to give somebody else that feeling, like, because I think that when I got that feeling, I stopped fighting against my chaotic environment. I started to feel like I belonged, and I found my footing. I found where I belonged, and I was able to contribute positively to society, because before that, I was not. Like, a lot of people don't know, but I was like not a lot of people bullied me growing up. And so I just gave that right back to the world for a long time, until I found places like Rise, where I started, people just, they saw me for beyond like these labels I was given. And I think that's what a mentor does. And that's what I want to do, so that I just really want world peace at the end of the day, honestly. So more people finding themselves, I feel like, equates to world peace. And yeah, I just want to be a part of that, honestly. And I think mentorship is how I've found my place in the world. I feel like I give value because I'm a mentor.
I love that. Circling back all the way to the first question, I think that's exactly what good mentorship looks like, giving you value and allowing you to really just shine and feel supported in figuring things out. I think that's an amazing answer. So happy to hear, and glad that we can share all of this, both from a mentor and a mentee perspective. Yeah, Bruno, did you want to touch on this question before I move on?
Briefly, I guess. I just really liked the sort of generosity of spirit that Elle talked about. I think it's really nice if that can be brought in, for sure.
Absolutely, I agree.
Can I ask a quick lateral question?
Yeah, absolutely.
To the fellow panelists, just because I love what was being said. Because it makes me think about like how I never wanted to create a mini-me. Mainly because like I feel like in trying to turn someone into a version of myself, I'm actually not honoring who they are, right? And honoring their gifts or their lived experiences. And so my question I want to ask and share to the fellow panelists is like what do you do? I mean, I know I do. I have no problem with saying no, but I wonder if anyone else has other better practices or you know, experience with what do you do if you know that this person is not a right fit? Or let's say like, you know, you have a mentee who come, or a prospective mentee who comes to you and is like, yo, you know, and you know they're not a right fit. Like, do you straight up turn them down as I do? Or do you you know, have a different approach in terms of dealing with things that are not aligned?
Well, that's an interesting question, but I don't have a lot of experience with mentees coming to me. So I've had some limited experience and they've all been positive. So.
Or even mentorship as well. Like, let's say like you ask someone for some type of informal or formal mentorship and you realize, this is not the right fit.
I'm going to echo back what something else said earlier about that. I think you mentioned that you wanted to do it in a certain way, but you know, it was like you're always sort of bumping up against the wall, sort of. And I think with mentorships, like any relationship, I mean, it's about timing and where you are in your life and the time it's that experience, that knowledge, and you have to know whether you're open to receive that. It's like, trying to do meditation or yoga or things like that, and you realize, look, I'm not in a place where I can actually sit still for, for 30 seconds at a time. So, and that's something I think that both sides have to sort of understand, that this may not be the right experience at this moment. And then you can say, like, it's no harm, no foul. It's just that, it's not the right time.
This is such a good question. Like, I had to really dig in my mind. I know I've had these experiences. One that really stuck out in my mind was just like somebody that I really respected what they did, what they were good at when we met, and then they wanted to be good at something that they saw that I was good at. And I wanted to provide mentorship because I love doing that. But then I recognized that something that one of my mentors told me, like in a coaching program I was back in, was that you need to be coachable. And if you're not coachable, then that's when as a mentor, that this person, like, that's how they told me how they step back. When they see that somebody's not coachable, they recognize that when, you give them homework and they don't even try it. Like, they just come back and say, nope, didn't work. Like, everything you say is like, they just have a negative thing to show you why that won't work. And then for me, I do have a hard time sometimes with confrontation. I pull out a big cushion, so I don't straight up turn people away, but I will have a couple of meetings, but I do give myself now a deadline, like if they don't change by like the third meeting, then we're going to tell them that we don't have the capacity to continue this relationship. Depending on who they are, if it's a non-coachable person and that's the reason, then I may not impart that knowledge on them, that I find them uncoachable. I'll just take it on myself and say that it's my capacity. I don't think I have what it takes to help you get where you want to be. That is sometimes a hard pill to swallow, especially if I don't feel like it's my fault. But then I realize, like, actually my mentor told me this, my ArtsBuild mentor told me this yesterday. He said, do you want to make a point, or are you trying to build a bridge? And that really hit me, because sometimes I get into this contention where I'm trying to make a point to this person, like, oh, even if they're young, old, whatever, but I just think I have more knowledge, so they should listen to me. And when I do that, then the whole bridge, the whole point of what I'm trying to do is bring us closer together, doesn't happen. So I would impart that knowledge as well. I'm still working on it myself, that sometimes you have to recognize it's the bridge that you're trying to build. The point doesn't matter, because the point is the bridge. So, and in mentorship, I think relationships, the point is we're trying to preserve the relationship. We want this to work. And I would rather cut things off so that we could preserve some level of like civility than to be at odds. And like, now I'm trying to tell you who you should be or what you should become or why you'll never be that because you're not listening to me. Like, what do I know? Some mentors have been dead wrong about me, like, honestly. So you really have to follow your own intuition, I think, at that point. But that's a great question, because that does happen on both sides.
Elle, can I add on the end of that, because you talk about building bridges, which is a great metaphor. And the other side of a mentorship is that yes, you can end, but you don't want to burn the bridge either.
And that's what he told me. My mentor said that making a point burns bridges. Like, and I was like, oh, okay. Because I was having a hard day, and I was just like, oh, everyone's like at odds with me. And yeah, he made that point, and it really just shifted my perspective. Mentorship.
Well, I'm really glad to hear, Elle, that things are going well in your mentorship that you're currently undertaking right now with us. I want to kind of circle back to something that we kind of touched on before. Quentin, this just came up naturally in conversation, but something that we hear a lot about these days, particularly, is capacity. So bringing capacity into the questions about mentorship, how do you be aware of that as both a mentor and a mentee? How do you set up healthy boundaries? And when you come up with really great ideas in conversation, how do you come up with boundaries with issues maybe like about intellectual property, or if someone has a really strong idea, whether it be the mentee or the mentor, how do you respectfully navigate that? I'll just throw that out. So I know that's a loaded question, so.
Yo, that was like a food truck. Like
Yeah,
that was
sorry.
super loaded. I don't even know if I want to jump in that first.
We can front end it. We can just talk about boundaries. How do we set up healthy boundaries in your relationship?
I mean, so I'm quite frank, like when I deal with people. Not frank. I just give it to them, but in a loving way. Like, so because I don't want to use the word frank, because sometimes you in being frank, you disregard who you're talking to and how that person might feel and receive. And I'm not disregarding people, how they feel and how they might receive what has to be said. But I from my own experience, like I sat down, I won't even name drop, I won't be that guy, but like I name drop, like I sat down with someone who was important, wealthy person, and they're like, how are you not wasting my time? That was a straight up point to me. How are you not wasting my time? Because if you're wasting my time, I'm now losing money. And if I'm losing money, you're now depreciating my value. And I was like, sheesh. So then in that couple of minutes, he's like, yo, you have 5 minutes. You have 5 minutes. And I was like, shh. You know what I mean? I was just like, yeah, I'm not even gonna panic. Because I'm like, you know what? The way I kind of like regained myself was like, you know what? In you provided me the resources I need, it will appreciate your value, and then, I give him a quick pitch, and, he liked it. But, and so I was like, you know what, that actually means a lot, because I'm doing a lot now, family man, et cetera. Like, I have to be mindful of also how, when you're taken away from my time, how that affects other people, and the other work that I need to do. So it's important for me to like sometimes be honest with the person upfront and be like, listen, this is the window that we're working with. This is what I can offer you. What is it that you really need, right? And if this is of value to you, then also let's make sure this exchange is within this time and also within this boundaries that we are kind of creating, right? Which goes back to having expectations, right? So sometimes I start off with asking, like when I did the last residency with Steps, I asked my mentee right away, what are some things that you expect? Not your goals. Don't tell me about your goals. What are some things you expect in this offering? Because I expect the person to already have done the research. So I asked them, like, what do you expect? Do you even know anything that I do? Because at that moment, then you can't expect, if you don't know my skill sets or anything that I've done, then how are we going to really have a reciprocal conversation? One of the great things that Steps did was they gave me that person's portfolio, and they also gave them my portfolio, right? So then it's like, okay, based on what you saw and based on how the ways that we interlap and intersect, what are your expectations? How those expectations link to your goals, right? And from that, we can then now have a conversation. Okay, well, this is what I can offer in this capacity. Does this meet your needs and wants? Otherwise, let's see how we can work this out, right? Or otherwise, maybe you should ask for someone else. That way, we're not wasting each other's time. Because also, as much as I don't want my time to be wasted, I don't want you to feel like your time is wasted, because then I might be taken away from the blessings that you have in store, right? And so that's kind of how I operate in that sense. Yeah, just getting out the way of like capacity. Hey, I might have 1 hour a week. Make that hour really, really good. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Having that transparency is super important on both ends. Absolutely.
I just want to clarify, like earlier I said, mentorship was a relationship, but I think that relationship should be based on a professional basis, as opposed to sort of like a friendship basis or something like that, where in a friendship, maybe you can't be super upfront with somebody who you don't really know that well on a friendship basis. But Yeah, but the relationship with your mentee or mentor is more, if you approach it from a professional sort of approach, you can just be straight up, you can just be honest. Like there's nothing really to lose there by being straightforward, right? Hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do agree with that because I think that's where sometimes for me, like lack of boundaries, I've definitely seen that can really hurt your relationship, because even though you think you're being friendly, you're actually setting this person up for failure. Like as a mentor, I think being too friendly, you are setting them up for failure, because especially when people come to me for professional, like they want to do something in their professional career, this is not like a personal goal that they're working on, it's more professional, then right off the bat, we know that you're trying to get from like here to there. So focusing on things that are outside of that, unless it's affecting your performance, I think that derails the relationship. And I've seen where like the lines have got blurred, where even I don't know, like, is this my friend? Because now we sometimes meet for coffee, but then we also go shopping together. Like, just because we're the same age or have the same interests, like if we entered this relationship for a professional reason, we should keep it there. And it helps to get your goal. Like, it's not a diss, like it actually will hurt our relationship if we do anything else. But so yeah, that's something I've definitely learned and seen. Boundaries are very important, which I think it goes back to Bruce's point that having clearly defined goals, but also adding in what you said, Quentin, that let's talk about your expectations, then we get to your goals. But all of those things, they definitely need to be discussed before we start this relationship, or else, yeah, we'll get there and we'll be like, so what do you want to talk about today? I found that like, even as a mentee, it's much better when I enter and my mentor is like, this is what we want to talk about, or I tell them, this is what I want to talk about today. We stay on topic. And every time we come back, that hour gets used productively. Like I've written books and screenplays because we stayed on track. So yeah, and we're friendly with each other still, but we don't have to know what we ate yesterday and stuff like that. So
it's all this is it's very good. It's very true, that sense. I mean, at ArtsStarts, one thing we do is we create community agreements and we co-create them. And I think it's really important that in defining or setting boundaries is to do this. And it also helps to destabilize the naturally inherent power structure in a mentor-mentee relationship, because you agree together, you co-create, and you're already taking out that thing that that power imbalance, and you're sort of leveling it off, and that everyone has power in the room. And I think in most formal mentor programs have some sort of written agreement, but I think it's important that even beyond that you can have this discussion with your mentor and say, look, we're going to create this together. So some of that can come out ahead of time and it's not a surprise.
Yeah, Bruce, I think you also kind of just touched on their ways that you can protect, I guess, like sort of if you're sharing new ideas and great things are coming of your sessions together, that's a way that you can kind of ensure that that question of intellectual property, how do you protect that? That could be a great way to address that, having that, from the get-go, having some sort of agreement, or just making sure you're very clear in what your expectations are. Exiting the mentorship too, I think, is important as well. Yeah.
And I'll add, yes, and if you do that, it gives you a paper trail in case there are disagreements that come up that you can actually refer to, that you had this discussion and you mentioned this could be an issue. So it's sort of out there on the table, and you sort of want to keep, the surprises to a minimum.
Yeah, for sure.
Can I quickly just add something to that?
Yeah.
By having those clear expectations and agreements, it also allows for room for the mentorship to, if it needs to, transcend into something else. Maybe it becomes a partnership and collaboration, or maybe it just becomes an actual friendship, or maybe it's just you guys go part ways, right? Like it allows for that next level, whatever that may look like.
Sort of on this vein of thought, how do you end a mentorship relationship, whether it be good or bad? We kind of chatted about this earlier, but we were like, how do you break up if things aren't going the direction that you want them to go? How do you handle ending a mentorship, good or bad?
Yeah, I hit them with the, it's not you, it's me.
Yeah.
Yes, if it's not going well, then as I said, I definitely put it on myself so that we can exit with like minimal, damage. And I think that I really enjoy programs such as the ones that like Bruce mentioned, and even ones that I've joined. I know there's a clear middle, beginning and end. If it's something more informal, then for instance, I had mentioned earlier, I've written like plays and books with my mentor. So definitely they are giving me ideas as well. Like I work with people on like my songs and stuff. Like writing it's so easy for like it to be my idea versus your idea, like who really said it first. Paper trail was super important. And also we had an agreement in the beginning, like where we said that if we make it to a certain level, then we will recognize each other as like co-creator, producer. Like we spoke about the roles that could come up should we get the funding that we're looking for. So I think that's really important too, to talk about the future and don't be scared to have those big conversations, because if you really do see you and your mentor's relationship growing beyond, just having like a one-on-one about one goal, I think it's important to be transparent about your expectations, as Quentin was saying, like even to say, a big goal of mine would be that we would get to work on something together one day. That way it's not a surprise. Like I love what you said, Bruce, let's minimize the surprises. Just talk about those hard things first, and I promise it feels a lot better in your relationship knowing that you're not like hiding something, like secretly you're waiting for your opportunity to pitch this play without your mentor, like, or that you're thinking the mentor might do that to you and then you're not really giving your best in the relationship because you're scared to give your best ideas, which I think that could damage your relationship if you don't trust each other in that way. So I do think, having the paper trail, it helps you. It feels very formal at first, but then you get to have more freedom, as you were saying, Quentin.
Yeah, and in addition to the paper trail, it's also just having deadlines, right? Like if it's an informal mentorship, let's say it's just specifically like you want to bounce ideas, like I'm gonna name drop like Kenneth Lum. Like Kenneth Lum was a dope from Monument Lab, legendary public art person, and I had very specific questions. Hey, can you answer these questions? Hey, I'm doing this installation, blah, 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 blah. And he kind of like ran some ideas by me. And he's like, hey, listen, this is my capacity. After this project, check in with me. But after that, he was like, yo, I'm not your mentor no more. Like, I'm your peer. Like, he was, so like in that moment, once that deadline kind of passed, it was kind of like, yo, we're seeing each other eye to eye in this level, I still call him my mentor, even though he hates it, but like, but it was dope that deadline was kind of set, even though, he has so much more experience than I do. But it allowed us to kind of allow things to transcend, as I mentioned before. And also I've collaborated with my mentees as well. Kershaw, shout out to Kershaw, who I met through ArtsStarts. And, we worked on many projects. And so having that deadline really helped to be like, okay, you're no longer my student. Let's do some dope stuff together.
Bruce or Bruno, do you have any more thoughts on that before we go on?
No, like my experience I mentioned before is pretty limited in this regard. So, if it's a formal mentorship, obviously, you have clear guidelines, beginning and end. So, so I haven't experienced anybody ending my mentorship with them.
That's great. That's what we want here. I think,
I'll just add on the other end of that, it is also sometimes in some mentorships, it's okay to take a pause. It's okay to take, sorry, I'll use the word break and sort of regroup and say, wait a second, maybe this is too much on either side right now. I mean, because everyone has, their own personal stressors, and it's saying that, I have to step back. Can we re-engage at another time, as opposed to thinking you have to stay involved in it just because you've started it. It's again what I think, it's being honest, just being honest to yourself and to your mentor.
It's a great strategy, and that also helps preserve the relationship too. If you're starting to get into that territory where you're a little bit uncomfortable, you're just like, hey, let's take a breath, revisit this at a different time. That can also preserve your relationship, and it leaves the door open for future connections or collaborations in the future, which is also very important. I'm gonna ask maybe one more question, and then we'll open it up for wider discussion. But we kind of touched on this a bit earlier, but how can we make mentorship more approachable and inviting? Maybe thinking about this in the context of when you're just starting your career, you're a bit early on, how do you find a way to approach mentorship in a way that is comfortable and you can still get what you need out of it? Like, how do you just explore that as someone who's maybe had or participated in a mentorship before? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump in there because I did the annoying way. But then I figured out as I went along the better way to approach things. So I just nagged people. I knew who the people who I looked up to, and I just showed up. Like, you know what I mean? Like when I met Alyssa, like Alyssa was like, yo, move, like, and then it was just like, yo, bro, I can get you cans. So I had like a reciprocal offer, and then that's kind of was my way in to get those mentorships that I wanted. So like, for example, Mark Stardust would tell people, like I DM'd him like so many times to be like, yo, bro, I got this dope idea for your next t-shirt. Yo, I can help you design. I had a counter offer from what I wanted to learn, and so, but also doing the research, so doing the research to say like, I know the services you offer or what you're capable of or things you've done, and I respect it because I took in that time to learn, from what I've seen you already present. And, I want to, allow your legacy to be a part of my legacy, so that's kind of what allowed me to then, get more mentorship in different aspects and different capacities. But it took me a while to kind of get the right approach and not just nag people,
Yeah, sounds like doing your research and being prepared is a good strategy to start. If you have someone you want to approach, definitely do a bit of research on them before you approach.
Yeah, and I'll also say like it also helps you to be more specific with your ask. Like when I met Artist Lane, like I was very specific in the type of clay that she uses, very specific in, hey, like how do you know when you're over sculpting something, like, and she's kind of like a Maya Angelou, like she's like a grandmother vibe, so she was just ready to pour out because I did my due diligence, and I showed that respect and honor for her legacy, and so her pouring that knowledge into me was from doing all that.
Mm-hmm. Kind of goes back to that intention piece as well, what you want to get out of it. Yeah.
I think maybe it should be part of the larger conversation about, or rather mentorship should be part of the larger conversation about art careers. Maybe some artists who've had some experience in the arts aren't aware that, maybe somebody's looking to them or, considering them for a mentorship. So I think, if more people start thinking about their capacity to be able to give in this regard, maybe they could put themselves out there somehow, because I know a lot of young people and people who are emerging are kind of shy about approaching people sometimes if they're not really, aggressive in their approach to their career. yeah, I think, if it's just part of the conversation in a larger scale, maybe that'll come about.
Absolutely. It can be very intimidating if you're just emerging and you're trying to figure out how it works and you want someone to talk to and be candid with. So I think that's a good point there too.
I just want to mention in relation to what Bruno mentioned, which is a great point, is, in making it more inviting, I let people know, hey, hit me up on social media, especially doing workshops, I'll say, hey, I'd love for you to follow up, tag me in whatever you create, and I'll let you know what I think. Those are small, informal ways I've been able to provide mentorship. Hey, send me your portfolio. I'll share my thoughts. And obviously those are clear deadlines and small manageable things. So thank you for mentioning that, Bruno. Yeah, just creating ways to invite people to approach.
For me, I don't do this as much anymore because capacity, I realized that I do have a capacity and that so when I started out like providing mentorship or saying to people, hey, you can approach me if you want to know how to do XYZ, I didn't define as a mentor what XYZ was. Like, what is it that I would provide mentorship in? I knew that there were lots of people asking me like, hey, I want to sit down with you and chat. And like, they would do the thing that they were told to do, which is if you see someone that you admire and you want to be in the position that they're in, then go and ask them to have a one-on-one to pick their brain. Like, I remember getting that advice and now people coming to me and saying stuff like that, where I was kind of sitting there wondering, well, what do you want to pick my brain about? Like, that's cool that you want to talk to me about like me being a mentor or helping you with something. But I did find that there were a lot of people that they didn't know what they wanted me to help them with. They just knew that they liked what I did. They literally would say, I like what you do and I want to do that too. And so then I had to realize, like, at first that it was off-putting because it was what you said, Quentin. It finally has come full circle that I don't want a bunch of mini-me's. I don't want like you just copying what I did, because there's so many things I did that I would never tell you to do. Like, to get where I'm at, I would not give you this as the blueprint, like exactly what I did. So hearing my story, yes, it might inspire you, but it may lead you to believe that you can achieve these things doing what I did, and I wouldn't even recommend it. Like, so then that left me with, I realized that I had the responsibility, like Spider-Man says, I have this great power now. People want to hear how I got in this position that I'm in. And I understand now what the question is that they're asking, even if they don't know what they're asking. So I sort of take it on myself when I can to allow them to have like a half an hour consultation with me. That's like I'll give that. That's free. It could be for anybody. Even if you don't know me, it is on my IG, whether everybody knows it or not. It says you can book a consultation with me. And if you see what I do, you can ask me how I did it. In that conversation, I realized that that's my opportunity to have a discovery call with them. And I can start to break down their goals for them. And by the end of that call, I hope to be able to say to them, okay, these are the things I heard that you want to do. I'll ask them, like, what do you want to do? Like, forget about me and like what I did. I'll tell you my story, but now tell me about you and what you want to do. And when they start breaking that down, I think I have a gift for seeing other people's talents. And I will say, like, I've heard you mention like this thing like 6 times. I know you said you want to come to me for event production, but I just want to know about this writing thing that you have going on. Like, you keep talking about it. And I try to like pull those things out so that if we do get into a mentorship relationship, it will be more productive, because I think you said it too, Quentin, like sometimes if I can't see the thing in you that you see in yourself, then I might not be the right mentor for you, because now I'm like in this mindset that I just really think you'd be good at this other thing that you're not seeing. So that's my opportunity also to point them to a mentor that can really cultivate that in them. And maybe it's also because I think this is for like as mentors to accept that you don't have all the answers. Like, that was a hard thing for me to accept, that if someone's coming to me for this expertise that I say I'm so good in, and I don't have the answers for them, it would make me feel, inadequate as a mentor. But I realized that I can gain back that power and help them if I just redirect. It's not like a rejection. It's actually for the best. So yeah, I would say that is my answer.
That's great response. I don't even know if I should even wade in. Maybe two things I thought about the whole time was, one, I think from the mentee side, I mean, I think the greatest obstacle is just asking. It's just reaching out. And I think I said this in our pre-talk that if you don't ask the question, the answer is always no. So you have to at least ask, and it may take you, as eloquently described, that journey that you go to find out how to do that. But you have to put yourself out there to ask. And I think that's really important. And I think a mentor responds to that authenticity of that question very well. And they recognize, I think, that person themselves of sort of, asking for that, that moment that hopefully could transcend, what they do. The other one is that I think Quentin mentioned earlier, is that if you're going to climb the mountain and shout at the gods, then you better be ready to deliver. So if you're going to actually go to a mentor who is, you think, oh my God, that's like so it's someone who it makes you nervous even to be in the same room. You got to bring your game, and you've got to, if they ask you to like 5 minutes to do it, you have to, have the courage, to bring yourself to that place.
And I just want to add on there that that's, again, where like the preparedness comes from, because I felt confident to approach certain people to be mentors because I knew exactly what I wanted them to help me with. And I knew that because I knew what they did. And I said, hey, you won this award in 2019. I want to be I want to get into writing. I didn't know exactly even what I wanted to do in writing, but I knew I wanted to attain that level of success, being able to win an award for my writing. So I wanted to know, what is the path to be able to get to being able to submit for awards. And once I asked that question, then a whole bunch of other things opened up, because they realized I had this passion for writing. The mentor started asking me questions like, but originally it was me who finally, like, as you said, Bruce, I got the courage. I did the research like Quentin was saying, and I was like, okay, now I'm ready to shout at the gods, like, because like I'm ready to climb the mountain and shout at them because I have things that I need them to help me with. But I think just shouting at them and saying, help me, and not having anything for them to help you with. Like, what can I help you with if you don't know what you want to be helped with? So it might even be, hey, you're interested in getting a mentor, but maybe you need to take one more step before you approach people and start to discover, like, what is it about them that you specifically like thinking about their awards, like their accolades, and even things they've done in the community. Like, that's been a big attraction for me too, that I just really like how they're perceived in the community. I like the message that they're delivering. And then I even try to find out more about how they even got in that position. Depending on who they are, you might be able to access that info. If you're not able to access that info, another thing that I do is I do a big deep dive search on LinkedIn, Instagrams. Like, I just try to find out as much info, even, oh, they like dogs. Like, I like to, have information so that we can connect on things, and it shows them that you actually took the time to learn about them. Even if you're not exactly sure what you want to do with them, doing other research that can show, what, I just really like your, the persona that you have in the community. This is like things that people said to me that I'm like, you know what, I'll give you a chance. I will listen to your story and figure out how we can possibly enter into a mentorship, because I could see that they're like, yeah, and I saw you at this event. I saw that you were the host. I'm really interested in event production, and I really want to do hosting. And then we can get into another conversation about what experience they have, and then what I think they should do to get to these positions. But I do think you have to be prepared. Like, that's That's a really big thing. And even for me now, there's people I want to speak to right now, but I know I'm not ready. Like, and I tell myself that I'm like, nope, you didn't do the work. You don't really know anything about them. All you know is that they won this thing and you want that too. You have to do more research. Like if they have a book, go read it. Like they have a blog. And that, to me, if you don't do those things, then I don't think you really want to work with that person. Like, yeah, I think it might be something else that you haven't admitted to yourself.
Wow, these are some great, great points. And I hate to sort of wrap up where this is headed. This was really, really great to hear all of your thoughts and pick your brains on all these topics on how to be a good mentor and mentee. I think we might leave the last 13 minutes for some questions. So if anyone has anything that they want to ask, feel free to drop it in the chat and we can ask our panelists directly. Oh, here we go. I'll just go with the first question. I'm sure most of you can see it, but I'll read it out. I would like to become a mentor. I'm not sure how to start. Should I reach out to art organizations? And what would you recommend if I would like to offer my services?
Workshops. Start with doing workshops. Because you may not even know if you like it or not, right? So start with workshops. Because a lot of it is teaching. Not everybody likes teaching, and it's also important when you're starting out to figure out what your teaching style is, right? And the type of teaching approach that you like to take. Like for me, because I have a scholarly background, I like to do the research. Like I like pushing people to do research, and I build off a lot of constructivism. So it's like taking what you know and building on top of that, right? So I scaffold a lot, I ask a lot of questions. Right, that's my approach, right? And then that's where the lesson comes out. I think of like the Kung Fu master is like, show me your style, and then from there, I help to add to that value. So that's my approach, or my end.
Anyone else want to jump in on that one?
Yeah, I actually think that what Sarah said, that is a good way to reach out to arts organizations. But when you say reach out, one thing, and so this is a branch that I don't want, I guess, other people to trip over. As I told you, I wanted to be a mentor, like when I'm coming out the womb, and people could see that I was green and inexperienced. So what experience do you have? I would assess your experience first. That you're interested in being a mentor, like, oh, you know what, I have these skills that I could teach to someone. And then for putting that together in a proposal, like even just a one pager, and honestly, ChatGPT could write this for you. You can tell it to write you a proposal for being a mentor, and these are the things you want to teach. And this one pager will help you. It will be like your resume when you go to these arts organizations, because I would not just approach them and say, I want to be a mentor, unless they have a program, which honestly, a lot of arts organizations are looking for mentors. So if you search up like arts organizations that are looking for mentors, like research them. And if they're looking for mentors, then approach them and say, hey, I have these skills and I can be a mentor. But if it's an arts organization that hasn't asked, but you're interested in working with them, but you have the skill set, as Quentin was saying, even developing like a mini workshop and saying, this is what I would teach. And so that way they could even introduce you maybe like on a one-off basis, and then they will trial you as well, because they also have, like, arts organizations, we have to make sure that we vet the mentors too. Like we can't just put someone in that place because they tell us that they have this experience. I have to do my research and make sure that you can do this, because I am putting young people or emerging artists in a position, like I have a lot of responsibility and power, and I have to make sure that I use that wisely. So that would be my advice, like reach out, but make sure you are prepared to tell them what you can do, unless they've asked and you're applying, and then therefore the application will tell them.
I'm just going to underscore exactly what Elle said. It's like, do your homework. I mean, you have to know that if you're approaching an arts organization, you have to understand enough about them to understand the type of mentorship opportunity that they offer, the community that they're working with. You really have to understand all of that dynamic. because it may be that maybe what you want to offer isn't necessarily what they're looking for. So that's where you have to do your homework, and you can reach out. You can also, I mean, Neighborhood Arts Network, I mean, they do mentorship programs, and you can reach out to organizations like this, and you can apply for them. At least you'll start to understand what they're looking for and what the dialogue is about. But yeah, it's about doing your homework and understanding, what do you want to offer?
But I'll add to that, Bruce, that you know, playing alternative advocate, 'cause I don't play devil. But sometimes the best mentorship is the ones that you don't look for, you know. And so the counter question I'll pose to this person is why? Why do you want to do mentorship? Like, why do you want to be a mentor? And then that kind of helps you to kind of get a direction. One of the things I want to mention earlier was, like, for me, like, I respond to passion, you know. I don't do what I do because I like to do it. It's because I'm passionate about doing it, and I can't see myself doing anything else. It came out of necessity. So it's like, why is it necessary for you to try to teach someone else, right? So that kind of goes back to your passion. For me, I'm passionate about changing lives because I know how art changed my life and saved my life. And I saw how it can save other people's lives. So in my mentorship, I'm really asking my mentees, hey, are you out here trying to save lives? Otherwise, I may not be the right mentor for you, because that's what I'm about. I'm not trying to create another version of me, but this is my trajectory. This is what I'm passionate about. And my passion was teach you more than any of my skill sets. So if our passions don't align, then, you know, sometimes we have to reevaluate. And so sometimes it's also for you to question, what is your passion and why do you want to transfer it?
Amazing. I think really it goes back to research. I think that's kind of like the highlight, really just like understanding your goals will help you to approach, especially from an organizational standpoint as well, for us to know how to best support mentees. And yeah, I think just being aware of what your goals are in order for you to seek out the best mentorship opportunities for yourself. I love this next question from Laura. Which is, do you have any thoughts on non-hierarchical and collaborative forms of mentorship where mentor and mentee learn from each other? I know we touched on this a little bit already, and we're kind of tight on time, so maybe just a quick one-liner from each of you would be great.
I definitely do this, and I call them energy exchanges, because I just recognize early on that I'm like, yo, actually, you're coming to me for this help, but you are amazing at this and I need that help. So for instance, like, I help people with grant writing. I consult with them for grant writing. And oftentimes the projects I'm helping them work on are projects I am also passionate about. So instead of me charging them a fee, for instance, like, then we get into this. Now we're in like this mentor-mentee relationship. I'll mentor you on this skill, and then you mentor me on this skill. And I love that. Like, I believe in that so much.
I think like artist residencies are a great place for that sort of, you know, give and take. That's a sort of a different style of learning from each other, but yeah.
I was just going to add on the collaborative forms. I mean, we're talking about individual mentorships mainly, but the other side of things are organizational mentorships, where you actually work with other organizations, and you know, you do kind of the exchange and you sort of support each other. And this is so necessary right now, because you know, so many of our grassroots organizations are really under threat of coming out of COVID and still existing. So this is something that's really important. And in doing that, you really have to break down those hierarchical sort of things of, you know, oh, what is your revenue for the year, and and you really have to say, you know, we really want to learn from each other. And I would just sort of add that that's not what you're asking, but I always think that mentees and mentors learn from each other. Depends on the relationship, whether they both admit it, but it's absolutely symbiotic, always a symbiotic relationship as far as I'm concerned. I do it because I learn so much.
Absolutely. Sorry, I just got distracted there. We had another question that was sort of what we just talked about here, about learning opportunities from mentees and mentors. I want to maybe touch on this question quickly before we wrap up. This is, I think, a good question to consider. Geographic distance can present a challenge to providing mentorships and residencies. Any recommendations or thoughts on providing digital or hybrid mentorship programs? Have any panelists provided a digital online mentorship for any artistic discipline like painting or visual arts or music?
Yeah, I mean, I can jump right into that right away. Zoom has been amazing for digital mentorship. Because Asher Sankofa, we are federally incorporated, so we're working with artists across Canada. And so, yeah, it's just like literally like, hey, we will support people with giving them an extra camera. So then we can like see your face, but then also see whatever you're working on and then provide feedback and different ways, you know, to engage. Also, of course, they can send videos, et cetera, et cetera. So the energy exchange, as I was talking about, doesn't change, right, through the digital means. It's just using the technology differently. Has been, and then also Discord has also been really great for maintaining engagement, Slack. So there's all these new technical platforms that we can utilize that doesn't take away from the actual experience of the mentorship or the exchange in the mentorship. Like painting doesn't look different online than it does in person. Yes, you can't touch it and the tactileness of it changes, but you know, you can still see, hey, maybe you should mix that color a little bit better, or hey, maybe you should apply this coating, you know, that doesn't change.
I agree. I honestly have been able to access mentorship and be more accessible as a mentor because of because of the geographic distance. Thank you, COVID. I don't know who will ever say that, but I thank COVID because it helped me to realize that I could do so much over the internet, Zoom. I would encourage, like, if you do use these platforms, one of the things I found very successful, I've also learned how to do music production. So I've been a mentee and learned how to produce my own music and just doing Zooms, with a producer. And we used to meet in person, but I actually found that when we started meeting online, I was more focused and prepared for the opportunity. Before that, I was rushing to get there on time and all these other barriers that wasn't necessary. We realized we could just meet on Zoom. It's the same thing. We could share our screen. She could show me, I can also show her what I'm doing and she could tell me if I'm doing it right. Or, you know, as Quentin was saying, oh, all of a sudden, I might turn on my phone and so that she can see what I'm doing and we can have a phone call and a Zoom and yeah, I was able to learn how to do music production, and it wasn't successful for me in person all the other times I tried. So I give it up for the online space. I think it's really helpful for most things.
I'm going to say, just add to that, connecting internationally is also because, you know, we just think about geographically within Canada, but also internationally, you know, it's really broken down all those barriers. And I just want to touch on one other thing. You mentioned geography, and I just want to slip in here the idea of rural and urban, and understanding that because of through COVID, and there's been a lot of an exodus of artists, you know, outside of centers, and to go to different areas, and especially small towns with that. And it's really to think that mentors are all around you. They don't have to be only located in cities. And it's also something to consider is what the difference between rural and urban is, because it can really give you, I think being in a rural atmosphere can give you a closer understanding of community than being in an urban environment sometimes. I'm not saying all the time, but sometimes you experience that more directly.
I'll let Bruno go, but I want to add one more thing.
No, I don't have anything to add to this. I just want to say that I've learned a lot today. Thank you so much for allowing me to participate and listen.
The one thing I want to add was also with the digital, like I love it because again, I'm straightforward with my mentees. So I'll be like, hey, I'm multitasking, but I'm still paying attention, you know? And so that still allows me to be productive in multiple ways. But the one thing I do want to also add is this idea of, I know we didn't speak about it much, but also like sometimes your mentorship is not people, right? Sometimes it's nature. And so that's one thing that doesn't translate over digital, right? Like meditating in a forest, for example, and listening to the trees. You know, it sounds weird, but there is an energetic exchange, you know, and there is knowledge exchange that happens, especially from, you know, animals. And I learned this a lot from some of my indigenous knowledge keepers, you know, learning from all your relations, right? So sometimes your mentorship is with nature as well. So I want to make mention that that is something that doesn't translate digitally.
Amazing. Thank you all so much. I feel like this conversation, as you can tell, could go on and on. It's been so approach some of you if there's emails. I know Elle, you mentioned the consultations, which are other ways people could reach you in the chat. I think that would be great. Otherwise, yeah, I just want to thank everyone for staying all the way until the end and a little bit over time and give you back your evening. But this was such an amazing conversation. Thank you so much to our engagement team, Grace and Kruti, for support on tech on the back end. Thank you to our ASL translators, Tessa and Jordan. We always love collaborating with Arts Accessibility Network Manitoba. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for my co-host Tatiana from ArtsBuild Ontario for moderating this panel talk with me. And then thank you, of course, all the speakers, Bruce, Elle, Quentin, and Bruno, for all of your insight. It's been so amazing and so rich. And as Bruno mentioned as well, I learned so much. And yeah, I look forward to sharing this information more so with everyone. As I mentioned, this is recorded, so it will be posted. And yeah, lastly, I just wanted to thank our funders, Canada Council for the Arts, TD through TD Ready Commitment, and the Canadian Race Relations Foundation. Yeah, thank you all so much for a lovely talk, and have a great rest of your evening, day, whichever time zone you're joining us from.